All right. Apologize for the mess down here. Things are kind of crazy in the work area. As of late, I have a lot going on, so a little messy here. Plus, I work on a glass table because it's always going to be flat, and of course, you can see through to all the garbage underneath. Anyhow, the F-22 took a hit on the maiden flight. I'll post the video, but unfortunately, I'm still trying to tweak out my one-man filming operation, and I didn't get very good flight video. I did get video of the crash, but it was pretty far away. It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. It is like a slow poke, easy flyer. Looks really cool though. Alright, so probably gave it a little too much down. These are really big turns because I have it on low rates. And we just lost it. The motor at least. Okay, so we lost it again. And oh, it went down hard. Oh yeah. So it took some damage. I haven't touched anything yet. This isn't bad. This isn't bad at all, really. I mean, it's not good, obviously, but this really isn't that bad. And the wing popped off, but it looked like it came off right on the glue line. So we'll add this to the one of the rebuild videos, but really strange. We'll probably hear it in the audio. I had the shotgun mics on. Every mic was on all the cameras, so I'm sure we'll hear what happened. But I'm gonna kill this for now, pick up the pieces, which aren't that many, and we'll head back. But I'm kind of glad I crashed this to a certain degree. I mean, the F-22 is my favorite plane. I probably never mentioned that in any of the videos, but I picked this kit up, and this is like a really sweet F-22. Not very fast. In the flight video, you'll see that it's kind of a dog. It's a little heavy for the single 70mm EDF, but it flies really well. Very easy to take off, very easy to fly. But the speed control died out. It's a 10-year-old plane. It was in the kit, original speed control. I actually mentioned to Hank that I was a little nervous about the speed control. Who knows if it's going to crap out or not. Even the EDF as well. But he was kind of like, don't worry about it. And to be honest, I was the same way, not blaming him. I'm like, yeah, it's probably fine. So I should have switched it out because it definitely was a speed control because the way it went out, I've had that happen before. Anyway, what I want to do though, the reason I say I'm glad this happened to a certain degree is that I wanted to do videos of how I fix these planes. A lot of people would throw this out, right? Oh my God, look at it, it's in pieces. But this can be fixed. It's going to be pretty easy for the most part. There's just one part, this narsel here, I believe that's what they're called. You'll see this right here. How nice that is. And then this side over here is kind of, obviously destroyed. It came down, it hit, this area is where it hit. I could have pulled out of this and landed, but I had it on low rates and I didn't have enough speed and I didn't switch the rates quick enough. So it kind of piled in. And the wing came off right where it's actually normally connected. A little damage down here, that can easily be fixed as well. We'll go over all of this in this video. But the first thing I want to do is quickly show you. I'm gonna show you how I do it. I fix worse than this. So it might not be real pretty when it's done, but it'll be pretty good. For the most part, I don't think you'll notice. So the first thing that I'd usually do is I take all the pieces and I just kind of start piecing them together without gluing anything. You just don't want to go crazy and start gluing it back together because there may be something that doesn't quite fit well or is compressed. And that's one thing I want to mention. The big thing is foam compression. When this foam hits, and this is EPP, which is like your styrofoam cooler type foam. It's a little bit better than that. It's not as like brittle or apt to just pop into a billion pieces. It sticks together a little better, but not that good. I think EPS is what like Horizon Hobby planes are made out of, but you get foam compression, and that is the killer. The compression is where you really can't do much about that, so you have to kind of finagle it and maybe replace the foam or do some gap filling or try to re-stretch it out. So here's a good example right here is where this is compressed. If you look at the front of this narsel here, and then you look at this one, you can see where we have some compression right here. And of course, you can work it out, but you'll never get it back to what it originally is. And you don't really need to. as long as it looks okay, this thing's gonna fly. People underestimate, you know, what it takes to fly. And this thing will probably fly. If I just half-ass glued this back on here, it'd probably fly. But we want it to look as good as possible. So there's gonna be some rebuilding up in this area right here. This is really the killer right here. This is where all our problems are going to be. This nose will go back on, no problem. Glue this right back together. And I'm going to use hot glue for everything except for the wing. Now, the wing is originally hot glued on, and I'd rather use hot glue on foam than epoxy. Because the hot glue just seems like it fuses the foam together better. People are going to argue that epoxy is better, but it's not. You know, there's the old schoolers out there that epoxy is king. And sure, if you're using balsa, you should use epoxy. But with foam, hot glue has way better fusion. I've seen epoxy snap apart on a foam plane that's been rebuilt exactly where the epoxy was glued. I've never had a foam plane break apart where I've had the foam glued. I've actually had flown planes where I've crashed them and it's broke around the foam multiple times, but where it's hot glued back together will never break at that point again. So we use hot glue. The reason we're going to use epoxy for this is that the hot glue dries a lot faster than your epoxy. So the epoxy, I can blob it in everywhere I need it to be for the wing, get the wing fully in place, and then just hold it there. When I originally made this kit, I didn't need to do that because the wing fit snugly in there. So I was able to get the bead of hot glue in there, put it in, it was good to go. But we're not going to be able to do that this time around. So anyway, just want to do a preliminary video here. I might overdub this because the sound probably sucks. If it sounds decent, I'll keep it as is. Plus, I'm over being sick for a week, so my voice probably isn't the greatest. But anyway, I just want to show you here, if we take this nose and we just kind of half-ass place it in, and you can see where it breaks exactly, you know, on a nice line that you can put right back together. And this holds true for any foam plane when it crashes. So the first thing you want to do is just see where everything's going to line up that can easily go back together. And as you see here, it's for the most part lined up well. We have some chunks missing, but in general, if I just glued this back on right now, we would be really, it would fly. No doubt in my mind. I could just cut out all that foam and leave it all fucked up like that, and it'll fly. Well, we have to put the wing back on, obviously, but I'm just talking about the nose area. And that hot glue will hold this no problem. So as you can see, we've got a good base starting point. The basic thing that we need to fix is of getting the nose back in is pretty solid. We can glue this back together, no problem. Then our next hurdle is going to be this corner, which we'll get into once we start fixing it. So just wanted to give a quick once over. Let's get a little closer shot of this wing. And we have this chunk out of here is like, you know, that's a problem. You see these big chunks out of these planes when you crash, and it just, you know, it's a little overwhelming when you first get in the hobby because you're a little depressed. But you know, once you've done this for a while and crashed many planes, and there really isn't, it has to be a pretty bad crash to be unfixable. Again, this sucks because it was a pretty sweet looking plane, but it's not going to look much different when it's back together. And you know, we'll go over the control surfaces once it's completely back together. But this, as you can see, as I stated earlier, this is going to go right back into that spot right there. I mean, I just kind of stuck it in with my thumb really quick, but you can see how that's going to fit right back in and be good to go. And again, this is, well, I'll use hot glue on this. I'm going to use epoxy, you know, the least amount of places as possible because the hot glue is going to fuse that together much better. So I'll epoxy this back together. Or I'm sorry, I'll hot glue this back into place. We'll worry about the wing last, because that's going to be the easy part. And this is where all the work's going to be right here, in this area here. There's a lot of compression there, so I'll probably cut some pieces and glue it and form it. And, you know, there's probably guys that can do better than me, for sure, but I think when it gets done, you'll be pretty impressed of what it is, and we'll be back up flying this bad boy. And if it crashes again, hey, we'll fix it again. But we'll get a new speed control. So that's basically going to be part one of this video. Taking and I did really what I probably didn't do it. Part one of this is just basically pre-piecing it together without gluing anything, which is what I did. I basically put the nose into place, saw, you know, where we might have some gaps that need to be filled, but for the most part, I know, well, that's going to go together. And I I viewed every seam all the way around to get in my mind exactly what I need to do. And basically all I need to do is get this, back to one piece and then put it back, basically back together as is here, nice and straight. And then we'll gap fill everything else in between there. Then part two, there's really no piecing of this together. If you look up here, we have, this can kind of be pieced back together. But when we get to this area here, this is all compressed and smashed. So I'll probably do some type of replacement there. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but we'll figure it out as we go. Again, that's going to take a little bit longer. Then down here, we'll probably do this second. Once we get the nose under control, we'll get this chunk back in place here. And then we'll just work our way around. But, we'll get the basics done first. And this is probably, like I said, this is going to be the fun part. And I'm going to check all the electronics before I do anything, put anything back together, because we do have retracts on here. And the retracts are built inside. So now that this is already broke apart, I can easily get to it if we need to fix anything. So I'm going to verify all the electronics work, retracts and servos and all that. Once I verify that, we'll reroute wires and get it all glued back together, and we'll do that in part two of the video. So part one of it is just, whenever you crash a plane, the first thing you want to do is pick up all the pieces. I don't care how small they are. We have this little bad boy here. You pick up every single piece. I believe I've got every piece to this. And then you take it back to the shop and then, visually piece it back together, without gluing, so you know exactly where you stand. Once you do that, this is really where you kind of get motivated, because once you start piecing it back together just manually and visualizing how you're going to actually repair it, you're like, wow, this really isn't that bad. I mean, look, right now, just holding this right here, you're like, wow, this isn't that bad at all. And I wish I would have did the Aero Scout that I had a few weeks ago. That was in like 7 or 8 pieces. That looked like it was done. No one believed it when I brought it back to the field the next day. I stayed up till 4 in the morning doing it just for the shock value of bringing it back to the field the next day. But that's it. I mean, that's really what you want to do. Visualize, put it back together manually, figure out what you're going to need to do. Do the easy parts first if you can. Sometimes you have to do certain parts before other parts. But to me, it's more of a motivational factor. I really don't like sitting down and doing this. Once I start doing it, I really get into it. But to sit down and start working on it, is like the biggest hurdle. And then once you see it going, once you hold this together, you see it start going back together, you're like, hell yeah. Then you really get motivated. Then to getting to these integral parts right here, it gets your mind going, and you'll start figuring out ways to do it. Because again, you kind of want to show up to this club and say, hey, check it out, it's back up in the air. So that's part one here. Part two, I'll actually, get into actually gluing it back together. So, this is something I've wanted to do for a while, and this is a good example. Repairing a crash plane, part one.